and welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fan fiction. All right, so we are on chapter 16.
Yes, last week we found out about the Weasleys being attacked.
And Percy's dead.
And the garbage child, Percy Weasley, has died.
And, I mean, he's not super garbage in this story, so I'm, kind of sad he's dead. But also at the same time, I feel super vindicated.
Yeah. Oh, we also have to tell people what we're drinking.
Yes, so we're back to Ball and Chain, our good old blueberry raisin from Staggering Unicorn. However, we're drinking original.
Yep. Pulled out one of my old bottles. We're already both a glass deep and kind of only maybe a little drunk.
Maybe just a touch. Chapter 16, The Challenge. After the meeting, Harry had gone straight back to his dorm and had gone to sleep. He didn't want to speak to anyone, so he slept right through dinner and on until nearly midnight when someone coming into the dorm awakened him. Dean and Neville had already been in bed. Ron? Harry reached for his glasses on the nightstand. Is that you? Harry? It was Ron. How are you? Harry adjusted his glasses and slid out of bed. As good as you can expect, I suppose. Ron put down his bag. I wanted to go home with Bill and Charlie, but they insisted I come back to school. Your mom and dad okay? Ron rubbed his eyes before answering. They're both hurt, but they'll be out of the hospital by the end of the week. Mom won't stop crying about Percy, though. Harry put an arm around his friend's shoulders. I am so sorry, he whispered. Thanks. Again, Ron rubbed his eyes. Say, I'm going to go down to the common room. Fred and George and Ginny are down there. You want to come with me? Mean a lot to Ginny.
This is the first time Ginny's been mentioned in this whole story.
I know. At least it's canon that Ginny would really appreciate Harry's company.
Yes.
Harry nodded. Even though his response probably couldn't be made out in the dark, after throwing on his robes, he descended down the stairs. Fred and George were both sitting on the couch, looking stunned, while Ginny was curled up into a little ball in one of the big armchairs. Her face was wet with tears. Ron sat down in the opposite chair and took up a position much like the twins. Harry glanced down at Ginny's pathetic condition. Okay, her brother just died and her parents were attacked. It's not pathetic.
Don't be rude, Harry. That is very canon, Harry, though.
Right. But I would describe her condition as more depressed and dejected rather than pathetic.
Yes.
Right.
But that is a very, canon Harry narrator description.
Right, because it has no real depth of emotion because he was raised by monsters.
In a cupboard under the stair.
All right, so fair. I know, but I just read the next line. It's so sweet. Oh. Her pathetic condition. You mind if I share this chair with you? He asked softly. We can both fit. Oh. Ginny didn't make a sound, but she did sit up and let Harry get situated. She looked into his eyes briefly before sobbing, Percy's dead, and then buried her face into his shoulder. He wasn't quite sure how to handle this, so he just allowed her to soak his robes with her tears and carefully placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They said he ran straight into the Death Eaters when they burst in, George recounted. They killed him instantly. I will admit, though, that this is very Book 7 canon Percy, where he just runs full force into the fire.
Yes.
Mom's afraid that Bill and Charlie are going to go and try to go after them, Fred added. Don't worry, Dumbledore's got something planned. Harry felt it was safe enough to tell them that much. He'll get Voldemort. I sure hope so. Ron was gripping the arms of his chair and speaking through his gritted teeth. I hope he kills them all, Voldemort and all his followers. Fair.
Yeah.
He did just kill one of your family members. Harry silently agreed as he thought about the plan. He felt a pang of worry as he did so. So much was at stake. The plan was not going to be carried out for some time, as they had to wait for Polyjuice Potion to brew. So at least 2 weeks and a full moon.
Why does Snape not just always have some
in his storeroom?
Yeah.
Brewed up and ready to go?
On hand.
I don't know. Probably because it's a school full of teenagers and he's afraid that someone will break in and steal it?
True.
Since, students did break in 3 years ago and steal ingredients for Polyjuice Potion.
True.
During that time, Harry was once again forced to spend his free time with Professor Snape. Only this time, he was getting lessons. He had begun to consider the organization of the potion storeroom to be far less stressful. Snape had no patience. I can't believe that's the best you can do. Need I show you again? Harry gripped his wand tightly. He was not about to be thrown across the room again. Snape had translated Dumbledore's orders to instruct him some necessary advanced magic into meaning dueling lessons. Purposely, he raised his wand and shouted, "Expelliarmus!" Snape successfully blocked it. "Expelliarmus!" he returned. Harry attempted to block it, but was thrown off his feet, though he had managed to soften the blow so that he didn't completely get blown over and stunned as Gilderoy Lockhart had. "Damn it, Harry!" Snape looked ready to strangle him. "Your wand work is just pitiful." "It's not pitiful," Harry grumbled. "I get good marks." "Good marks?" Snape repeated. "That doesn't mean anything." "It means I know how to use my wand." This lesson looked to be heading on a collision course for disaster. "No, it doesn't. It means you got the words and the correct movement, but you're not putting any power behind it." "Power behind what?" Harry couldn't believe this. "Power behind what?" Snape looked at him in disbelief. "Don't tell me no one's ever explained to you." "Not until 7th year, Severus." Dumbledore's voice rang out in the empty dungeon classroom, calming and reasonable. Snape immediately straightened, and most of the frustration drained from his face. "Have you started lessons in apparition yet?" "Apparition?" Snape glared at Harry. "Not with this clumsy wand work. He needs to understand the principles of magic before we have him attempt to apparate. I'm not about to fix splinchings right now."
I feel like the principles of magic and like the
I feel like
power.
that's first year lessons.
Yeah, this should be stuff that you learn in your first year.
Apparition? Splinching? None of this sounded overly good. He looked towards Dumbledore for reassurance. "Harry?" Dumbledore asked kindly. "Do you remember the very first spell you ever learned?" Harry thought back. Why was he being asked this? Then he remembered. Ron had used it on the mountain troll. "Wingardium Leviosa," Harry replied, feeling like an idiot. "Ah, yes." Dumbledore smiled and pulled a feather out of his sleeve, setting it down on the nearest table. "Now, I want you to perform that charm." Harry stared stupidly at the feather. What was this? Wasn't he supposed to be learning advanced magic to help him fight the Death Eaters, Dementors, and Lord Voldemort? He raised his wand, but Dumbledore reached over and plucked it from his hand. "Without a wand, Harry."
Wandless magic.
"Without my wand?" Harry gasped. "Professor, how am I supposed to manage that?" Dumbledore looked at Snape, passing Harry's wand to him. "Isn't it dangerous to teach Potter this so soon, Headmaster?" Snape whispered. "Not if you point out the danger in it. Besides, you are right there, and he needs to know the fundamentals of the powers that reside inside him. And I can think of no one better to teach him." He gave Snape a pat on the shoulder, then took a seat in the back of the classroom. Snape crossed his arms over his chest and stared down at Harry. Even though Harry had grown considerably over the years, Snape still towered over him, standing a few inches past 6 feet. "The magic," he began, "that resides inside of you, inside of me, inside every witch and wizard differs in its potency. Without dipping into it, you can still perform magic, but just to suffice, your wand draws what it needs from you and directs it at whatever or whomever you might be pointing at. This is for small tasks and keeping students from hurting themselves. We usually reserve this lesson until the student is in his last year because it would be far beyond a first year's control or comprehension and can be extremely dangerous. What you will be doing is drawing upon the magical energy inside of you and focusing it into your spells. My magical energy? This sounded so hokey, like something Professor Trelawney would come up with. Yes, Harry, Dumbledore spoke from the corner.
I don't know why, but I couldn't take that sentence seriously. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Harry.
Yes, Harry. I gave him such a breathy voice. I was like channeling my inner Trelawney when I said it.
Yeah, but just like, that is exactly how Dumbledore would have said it.
It was perfect. I don't know where that voice came from. It just came out of me. The very thing that makes you a wizard. I believe you know exactly what I'm speaking of. I do? Dumbledore nodded. A Patronus needs a wizard to purposely throw some of his magic into the wand to make it powerful enough. But I thought that was just good thoughts that created a Patronus. Giving that warm smile that Harry associated so well with the old headmaster, Dumbledore explained, to some extent, though, how would you explain your first attempts to be so weak? You were excited or so terribly frightened that it truly became powerful, did it not? Harry thought hard on it. Was this true? And the times you performed magic when you were incredibly upset? I believe that one year you blew up your aunt over the summer. Snape gave Harry an odd look while Dumbledore's eyes glinted over his spectacles. And you did that without your wand. Yes, but I had no intention of doing it. Dumbledore chuckled and came over to stand before him. Didn't you? Harry didn't really want to answer that. And if anyone other than Dumbledore were asking, he wouldn't. I suppose so. But she insulted my parents. There's no need to defend yourself. It's perfectly understandable. Now, what made your aunt blow up without a spell or a wand? And that shows that you had a lot of potential. Mr. Potter, it's that powers that Professor Snape is talking about and is going to help you harness. But how? Harry asked. If I don't even know how I'm doing it. Dumbledore stepped forward. Take my hand, he ordered. Carefully, Harry did as he was told and took the headmaster's wrinkled hand into his. It surprised him at how cold and bony Dumbledore's hand was, and his skin was like tissue paper. But then, something odd began to happen that changed that. The hand became slowly warmer, and to his amazement, Dumbledore's palm became hot, almost too hot to touch. At last, it receded, and Dumbledore looked down at Harry. Now, it's your turn. His turn? What am I supposed to do? I drew upon the magic in me and pushed it through my hand. Harry stared at his hand in awe. How do I do that? Oh my. Dumbledore stepped back to think. Well, he looked toward Snape and chuckled. It's been about 50 years since I've actually taught. This isn't something that we teach. Snape was holding Harry's wand and seemed to have noticed something particular about it and was studying it closer. My father explained it to me as light, imagining that light was inside of you and that you need to guide it through your arm into your wand. A light? Harry imagined a soft glow inside him. Maybe at his stomach? Let's keep reading.
Oh my god, we're so bad at this.
He closed his eyes and imagined pushing it towards his arms. Nothing happened. He screwed up his face and imagined the light to be larger, like the blue flames Hermione conjured in a jar. Still nothing. With a sigh, he imagined something much brighter, like the sun. The strangest sensation filled him. He was suddenly aware of the tingling. It was warm, almost comforting, as it swelled in his chest. He had the palm of his wand hand pressed against Dumbledore's, and the sensation grew to where he was almost afraid that it would leap out of his chest. It coursed through his shoulder, down his arms, and into his hand. Almost immediately, his palm began to burn. Dumbledore quickly withdrew his hand. Had he done something wrong? Harry looked down at the floor as Dumbledore eyed him in a very particular way. He lifted his eyes. Snape was staring at him too. Did I do something wrong? It took Dumbledore a moment to answer, and when he did, he seemed to be in deep thought. No, Harry. You didn't do anything wrong. Not anything at all. He gave a weak smile and patted Snape on the arm and left, still immersed in deep thought. Harry looked at Snape for answers, but he looked as if Harry were about to turn into a toad or something. So, Professor, Harry jammed his hands into the pockets of his robes. How do I use that to move the feather? This seemed to break Snape out of a trance. As if you had your wand, he explained. Harry didn't understand, and Snape could see it on his face. He looked about to lose what little patience he had. You know the spell, don't you, Potter? Meekly, Harry responded. Yes, Professor. He wished that Dumbledore hadn't left. Place your hand over the feather and say the words of the spell, in your head if you wish. His hand was trembling as he held it out over the feather. It wasn't helping that he had Snape breathing down his neck. He closed his eyes and tried to imagine that Snape wasn't there as he pictured the bright light again. He opened his eyes and stared at the feather. Wingardium Leviosa, he thought at it. The feather didn't budge. Wingardium Leviosa, he said to himself. The warm, tingling sensation returned, and with less concentration than before, he directed it at the feather through his hand. Wingardium Leviosa. Violently, the feather shook before shooting up to the ceiling, where it stuck as if plastered there. He stared at it, unbelieving, until it peeled off the ceiling and floated down, looking very battered. As you can see, Mr. Potter, Snape spoke in an extremely dark tone. Not using your wand can be a very dangerous thing. The magic in its most raw form, unpredictable, and virtually uncontrollable. That is why we use wands. What I suggest to you is you practice a simple charm, such as this, with your wand, and try putting some true effort into your spells. However, class time is not time to practice, and if I ever catch you testing your spells on anything living, which includes fellow students you may not be too fond of, I will personally see to your punishment. And I will warn you that if you ever wish to see me truly angry, that is the way to do it. Harry nodded, not having the slightest inclination to argue. Harry hadn't quite figured out what to think of his lessons involving practicing some more powers behind his spell. He seemed to be only able to perform the spells as he had or overperform them. During one session, he attempted to Accio cauldron cakes with some cauldron cakes he had set on a table, but he had been pummeled all at once and had to leave the lesson early to take a bath, and Snape had gotten angry as the cakes had done a fair job smattering all over him as well. Snape seemed to act differently after the first lesson with Dumbledore. He seemed somewhat frigid, but Harry couldn't blame him. With cauldron cakes flying at his face, who wouldn't be worried about what was next? Professor LaSalle joined Snape for lessons on apparition, and these he quickly learned to hate and begun to dread the lessons even more. Harry, where are you going? Ron asked one afternoon as Harry left yet another lesson. Got some extra work to do. What extra work? You've been doing extra work almost every ruddy afternoon. Ron's face looked hurt and angry. He hadn't smiled in almost 3 weeks, and Harry had been so busy, so concerned with Dumbledore's plans and the lessons with Snape and the impending owls that he had begun ignoring his best friend. A pain stabbed him in the heart as he thought about it, but it was all so overwhelming. There were times that he wouldn't mind being locked back beneath the cupboard under the stairs where he could stay, blocking out the world and Voldemort and all the heartache. I'm so sorry, Ron. His sincerity came out in his voice, and Ron looked about to cry. can I at least come with you?
Oh, Ron.
I'm gonna cry right now. Oh my god. 2 glasses of wine in this chapter is not a good combination. Ron's voice was cracking. Harry so badly wanted to let him come along, but he knew Snape would never allow it. Then the idea came to him. He could trust Ron. After losing his brother and nearly losing his parents, he could be trusted with keeping his mouth shut. I'll let you if you can keep a secret. You can wear my invisibility cloak. What type of secret? Ron asked Riley. A big one. One involving Dumbledore.
Dun, dun, dun.
Ron's eyes grew wide as Harry led him up to their room to fetch the invisibility cloak and a change of clothes, as Snape had asked him to bring. He hoped it didn't mean another lesson with cauldron cakes. While there, they were alone, so he unfolded all that had happened the night that the Snapes had returned and about the meeting between Dumbledore and all those who were helping him. He then explained about the lessons. So Snape was there? He was with them that night? Ron began. Yes, Harry replied. But you must understand that you can never say anything. If someone like Draco Malfoy found out and told his father, I understand perfectly. But if Snape was there that night, Harry didn't let Ron finish that sentence. More people would probably have died. Oh, Ron's voice trailed off as he thought exactly what that meant. They headed out of the dorms and the common room quietly, Ron just carrying the cloak under his robes, so if they wanted to talk, they could without Harry suspiciously talking to a disembodied voice. My parents are doing much better, Ron said after they had entered the dungeon quarters. Though Dad's gonna walk with a pair of crutches, Bill and Charlie have decided to stay for a while to look after Mom. Oh, look, it's Potter and Weasley. Harry cringed at the voice. Your dad and Mom feeling better, Weasley? Harry instinctively grabbed Ron's arm. Watch it, Malfoy, Ron spat. My dad's the minister now. He could have yours thrown in Azkaban any day, so you better watch what you say. Hey, Malfoy smiled. No need to get so upset. I was just asking how your family was doing. Nothing wrong with that, is there? I heard they were doing well. Harry gripped into Ron even more tightly. So how are they, Weasley? Oh, how about that brother of yours, the annoying one, the head boy from a while back? I heard an unfortunate rumor that he was dead. Heard that he screamed like a little girl and pleaded for his life on his knees, too. There was no holding Ron back, and it took all of Harry's strength from not doing to Malfoy what he had done to the feather. However, he got the satisfaction of hearing a loud crack as Ron put his fist right into Malfoy's nose. Malfoy stumbled back, holding his nose, blood trickling down onto his robes. Letting go of his nose, he lunged at Ron. The fists began to fly until Ron, just by being so much taller than Malfoy, had managed to get him down on the ground where he could just begin to pound relentlessly on his face. Crabbe and Goyle seemed too stunned to do anything at all, and Harry was the one who finally stepped forward and grabbed Ron's shoulders. He's not worth it, Ron. Now, come along before Snape or Filch sees you. Ron wouldn't stop. Please, Ron, your mom and dad wouldn't like getting a letter right now. Ron finally stopped. He was breathing hard and his face matched his hair. Malfoy took this opportunity to push Ron away and gain his feet. I'm going directly to Professor Snape. Oh, you are you? Harry said rather quietly. Then the whole school can know how Ron beat you up? Because I would say he wiped the floor with you. Malfoy turned red. I think it best you go back to your common room and get cleaned up. And Ron won't say a word if you don't. Harry wondered if his voice of reason would reach any of them. They were both staring at one another, ready to fight again. You were the first to throw a punch, Weasel, Malfoy said mischievously. That doesn't matter to the professors, Harry pointed out. You both were in the same amount of trouble. We'll see about that, Malfoy snared. After I see Professor Snape and show him my nose. You think he really cares, don't you? Harry's anger was growing. He'd really like to see Malfoy squashed against the ceiling. What do you know, Potter? Malfoy gave a knowing laugh. I know more than you do. And Harry was right. You're scum, Malfoy. And you'll end up just like your father, who's running straight towards ruin. You trying to pick a fight with me too, Potter? Malfoy said slyly. You're not worth my time. I'd have to say the same about you. However, we don't know, do we? What do you mean? Ron growled. Harry could pound you any day. Really? Malfoy seemed very happy all of a sudden. Then why don't we see? A duel. I challenge you to a duel. Not another one,
Same,
Ron commented.
Same.
I feel you, dude. Yeah, Harry added. Last time, you bugged out. Yeah, well, Malfoy was looking absolutely devious. Last time, we were in our first year. We wouldn't have been able to do much to each other anyway. But now that we're older, I mean it this time. You, me, and our wands. If you really mean it, I'll be his second. No seconds, Malfoy shot quickly. Just Potter and me. Then no Crabbe and Goyle, Ron ordered. Yes, no Crabbe and Goyle. No one else. Harry was suddenly left out of the conversation as Ron began to sprout off all of the conditions for him. No other students. I won't tell a professor. You have my word as a wizard. I'm interested to see how I match up to Potter. I won't mess it up. We need to see who really is the strongest one once and for all. Malfoy seemed suddenly very serious. No unforgivable curses, Harry said gravely, not putting it past Malfoy to try and use them. No unforgivables? Jeez, Potter, who do you think I am?
Someone who would use an unforgivable curse.
And we'll have it at a time before curfew. Malfoy didn't seem to like this. Then he thought, okay, 9:30. That will give us a half an hour. I don't think it'll take that long. 9. Okay, 9. If I get to choose where. Where were you thinking? Down here in the dungeon. No one will hear should you scream. I know of a classroom. Snape doesn't keep it locked. Harry was a bit skeptical at this. Okay, but no tricks. No tricks. And 9 o'clock right here tonight. I'll bring my wand and you do the same. Once we've officially start, all is game except for unforgivables.
End of chapter 16.
Bam!
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the trap door.
Please leave us a review on Facebook or iTunes. It would literally mean the world to us.
It really would.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Through the Trapdoor 16 or on Twitter at The Trapdoor.
And please send us an email at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com with any story suggestions. And as always, join us again next Saturday as we travel through the trapdoor.